I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the Will Gather podcast. Many family caregivers assist their loved one with all of those activities of daily living: dressing, bathing, making food, all of those household visits, doctor's appointments, medications, and sometimes we're in over our head and we're not always sure of the best way to do all of the things. My guest today is Consuela Marshall. She's been a home health occupational therapist for about 25 years, began caregiving for her daughter who had physical limitations, and then became a primary caregiver for her mom who had multiple strokes. Consuela is the founder of Finding A Foothold. She wants to help family caregivers create a caregiving life that is easier to bear, one that is less physically and emotionally draining. She teaches us how to develop a how to care, find the support that we need in a safe and efficient manner while we can still live a very fulfilled life. Having firsthand experience of the struggles that we as caregivers go through, how do we find our foothold? What does balance look like? How do we give ourselves permission to create an environment that supports our caregiving? Consuela has a unique ability to understand what we're really going for and have empathy for us as we're in that role. She has seen the struggles up close and personal and lends her expertise as she is an occupational therapist, a certified aging in place specialist, and a fall prevention specialist. It has been a joy to connect with Consuela. You get to hear her heart and be encouraged as she shares how we can live a fulfilled life. Here is my interview with Consuela Marshall. Good morning. How are you? Oh my gosh, the day's here. I can't believe it.
It's here.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Tall Girls Unite. There was a group of us.
Well,
There
you've
was
got
a,
me by several
oh my gosh,
inspirations.
I know. There was a group of us in Virginia at the Care Colloquium, and
Yes.
it was so fun to see. And of course, we're welcoming of all people of all heights, but it was fun. There was like, I mean, how many of us? Maybe five or six that were at least 5'10", which was just kind of cool. What did you think of the Care Colloquium? What did you love about it? What was like a takeaway for you?
Just the commonality that everyone there had a passion for caregivers.
Hmm.
I've never seen that in one place. Everyone coming together to see how can I make the lives of those who are caring for people who have great needs better.
Yeah.
To see that and just to see everybody wanting to see what their role could be in the big picture of that and realizing that everyone standing alone as an island is not moving the needle
Right.
much, that it is going to take a collective effort of all of our expertise to really impact these 53 million plus US caregivers,
Right.
and to see all of that in one place, it was just an electricity there that was just so energizing. It was just energizing to be
Hmm.
there and just to say they get it. They get it. And I it just made you hopeful that you can start to see progress.
So
So yeah.
true. Yeah, it was electric. And we all have our own mission and voice, but to come together collectively. And then it also made me feel like being a solo entrepreneur that I actually have like a team and a community that I didn't really know existed until now, where because I've never really had coworkers, when you're doing your own thing. And so it felt like this like big group of coworkers and friends and teamwork that we can support
True.
each other. Yeah.
True. Because I did until you just said that I am a solo employee.
Mm-hmm.
My office is my I am going home to home, just me. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to interact with anybody on a daily basis other than the clients and their
Right.
families. So that I think you saying that did make me feel so connected.
Yeah.
Yes, like I was supported, that I wasn't shouldering something all by myself. So yes, I love
Right.
that. That was. So ingenious.
Thank you. Thank you. And it brought us together, which is even one of the best things is just meeting people, and you teach others how to care so wonderfully and really focus on how do we not put as much physical burden on our bodies, but also the emotional burden and how draining it is. And you have such a calm and warming presence. What was your introduction to caregiving? I know that you've got so much that brought you to where you are today.
I think it will all just go back to something that I guess a seed that was planted in my heart just in growing up and seeing what it means to serve other people, how to get out of yourself, how to give out of almost nothing and give to somebody and see it means so much to other people is, I guess, the model that my mom modeled. And I didn't even know it. But
Mm,
it came from that, I think, because she wasn't a selfish person. And then in my own personal life, the birth of a daughter was really my spearhead into me even knowing what a caregiver was. And really, I didn't even know at that point I was caregiving.
right.
I was unfortunate that this has occurred, and I need to be here for her. I need to make sure things are going to be right for her. And what can I do? And so my husband and I, it just became our life. I mean, this is our daughter. We have to take care of her. There's no other option. This is your child. So just starting it off as I'm just a mom caring for a daughter who will have permanent physical limitations,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got to make life better for her. And even saying that in the midst of having my own issues that came with that,
Mm-hmm.
but also just serving as a caregiver in that mold, in that role, it just became my life. And it really changed my life actually from a young college dropout, married
Yeah.
girl to knowing just didn't know what all I wanted in my life, but her birth allowed me to see what was inside of me that was
Mm.
hidden, that was being developed, that was blooming out of my life that I didn't even want to happen, but it was coming out of me. And it really sort of took me on a path that is now my whole being
Mm-hmm.
till I don't even question the why anymore. Oh, in my beginning years, it's like, why did this happen to us? Why it doesn't even matter. The why.
Yeah.
The why is what I have made it become. And it has become my life story of wanting to help other people move from not knowing what to do and don't know how to hit the boots to the ground the ground and make something happen physically to much more than that, because I always thought it was just the physical doing of caregiving is what people needed to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't. I did not know that there was so much other things being worked out inside of me that needed to work out as well. And that's was my introduction into caregiving in the real sense of the word, was in being a mom. Yes. And then adding to that,
Mm-hmm.
being a daughter
Mm-hmm.
who eventually cared for her mother. So it didn't sort of, it did felt further develop my definition or broaden my definition of what caregiving means. And it gave me another lens to look through. I hope I'm answering the question, Miss
Yeah, you
Nicole.
are. You are. It's just how your story comes to be
Yes,
and what it's taught you and how you now share that with the world and everyone else. Yeah.
yes. And how it grew me, just not as a human being, but even as a professional, even being in the role of caregiving through the lens of I've helped my daughter and I want to see other people help their family members and not give up and
Mm-hmm.
not and just learn those tricks and those things to take the stress off of them, because what I found that many caregivers were working too hard. And if I wasn't a therapist, there was just I question, would I have figured this out on my own? No
Mm-hmm.
one showed up and showed me any of this. This is stuff I had to go learn.
Yeah.
And even that learning wasn't complete. There were so many missing components. I'll say occupational therapy school, all of those years, all of that tuition, all of that
Yep.
internships, it helped. It gave me a foundation by which I am grounded in the mechanics of how to physically help people. But it was not until I was my mother's caregiver that showed me that the emotional piece of caring for someone that you love greatly impacts what you even want to do physically. I don't care if you know all the right techniques, if you have all the right support. It is something about the psyche and that emotional piece of caring for someone that either makes you want to do it or tells you, I don't want to do this. This is so hard because it is more than the physical aspect. And it wasn't until I learned that after being my mom's caregiver that I totally, truly understand a lot clearer what caregiving meant. It was just not going in there and physically saying, okay, let's change the environment. Look, let's put this here and let's try that. No, it means I want to know why you don't even want to do this. You're, like I can work with the client and they can go on and on. This is so hard. Mom just don't want to go to the bathroom. She wants to just use the potty chair or just whatever the scenario
Mm-hmm.
is. And I'm like, that's really not the issue.
Yeah.
Show you where to put the bedside commode. I can
Mm-hmm.
show you where to put the grab bar that can reduce fall risk. But that's not really the big picture that I'm sensing that is the limiting factor here. It is that relationship that you all have that feeds into how can the caregiving be provided in a way that's healthy physically and emotionally for the caregiver and the care recipient.
People can't see me. I'm like nodding my head over and over. What you speak to is supporting people. And when you get deeper, I love that you're like, this isn't what it's really about. There's that deeper meaning in taking the time and knowing to continue to ask the questions. Because if we don't really get into addressing what it really is about, we're not going to be solving the problems that the families really need to begin with.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is it. And
Mm-hmm.
there's other times when it's just the physical part of it. Mom doesn't want a hospital bed because it may mean she's going to die.
Mm,
It just means mom needs a bed. This is too hard. Having a queen size bed and having to attend to all of the ADLs at a bed level is difficult when mom wants to
right.
stay in a king size bed when she needs to be repositioned and she wants to get in and out. It can be very physically draining
Mm,
on the daughter or
yeah.
the son. And it just the weight and the physical stress
Mm,
of working too hard has a negative effect on the emotional aspect
mm-hmm.
of caring for them. So that when they call you for that fifth time and say, can you pull me over to the left a little bit?
Yeah, you're like, I'm tapped
The
out.
all of this hearts are flying. And
Right.
it's not, it wasn't because you don't want to do it. It's
Mm-hmm.
just physically, it is so draining that you're not able to rest. You're
Mm,
not able to turn it off. They're calling your name, they're asking, and they have these needs all because the environment may not be set up to make it conducive for the caregiver to provide that care in a way that supports their physical and emotional needs as well. So it's it's always a balance of when I'm walking into a
mm,
situation, am I coaching or am I consulting or am I an OT?
mm.
And how do I wrap all of this together and really be looking at what is the picture here and just really showing clients that there is an easier way to do everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
yeah.
sometimes that easier way is you may not need to be doing this anymore. It may mean you need to go back and revisit your team of support. Let's look at who is available to help you. Who have you dismissed because of where you thought their role needed to be plugged into this whole caregiving journey? Let's revisit, let's look at what needs to happen. First of all, in your life is important first. What are your
Mm-hmm.
main connections that need to stay there? And what things can you put on the back burner for a season? And just getting them to go through the process of how caregiving needs to work for them first by taking into consideration what are the needs of the loved ones, and then we move forward on there in that process of how to structure environments, how to create teams to make it happen. So that's the beginning process.
Yeah, your lens too with the OT background, looking at environments. I think sometimes we don't necessarily go there first, but you said something when you were like, does the environment support you to be able to be successful in your caregiving?
Yes.
Yeah, it has to work for us so that we're not as emotionally drained or physically drained. And there's so many struggles that caregivers experience. What do you witness as some of like the big ones where you're like, we're finding that we're addressing this quite a bit?
Oh, I'm going to speak a lot to the caregivers who are supporting someone who has physical disabilities,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite different than someone supporting someone who has cognitive deficits.
Right.
With the Alzheimer's, the dementia, it takes on another whole realm that does have some physical components moving into it too, because as the brain starts to um, deteriorate, it does spill over into those physical aspects, so the motor skills in the brain. But specifically to those people who are caring for those with physical limitations, a common thing that I am addressing is the need for caregivers not to feel that they have to take on every physical aspect that their loved one has lost. If your loved one can no longer X, Y, or Z walk, you are not meant to be the feet for them 24 hours a day. If they've lost use of a hand, you cannot be their hand for them 24 hours a day. You cannot live your life and be whole, be healthy, maintain your relationships if you think you are going to take over and assume every role that that person has lost because of their physical limitation. That is one of the number one aspects that caregivers must realize, that some things will change forever. When a loved one unfortunately loses the ability to do something, as a therapist, we're coming in there to show them alternate ways. If we can help them to regain a motor skill or work around a sensory loss or just whatever is going on with them visually, anything that affects their ability to function, if we as occupational therapists, we find adaptive ways. We show you equipment, we show you different types of products that can help offset that loss. But there comes a time when we are done. There's nothing else we can add to that. And you're left with these deficits. And unfortunately, many people are walking around the earth with deficits that cannot be overcome. And as a caregiver, you've got to be accepting that their life will be different. And you've got to make sure they understand that you cannot keep the motion picture going in their life by putting in all of your effort so that they don't skip a beat in their life of what their life used to be like. They have to acknowledge their deficits. They have to come to a term in their life with their God, in their psyche, about this is different, and I cannot expect my loved one to come in and keep a routine that I used to have in a body that's no longer the same. And so, in a big picture, that is the number one thing that caregivers have to learn, how to let go of trying to keep normal normal. When normal will be different when your loved one has a physical deficit and you're wearing yourself out. You are doing too much because they are used to taking, their routine was they showered Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they want you to help them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They want to sit in this position. They want to get up and do this. They're used to having tea at noon. They're used to, and they want you to come in and accommodate for all of these things that they are no longer able to do themselves. And unfortunately, many caregivers step into the role of caregiving thinking that the definition of caregiving is that I'm going to come on the scene and I'm going to fill in every gap, every hole, every deficit that my parent has so that their life can be normal. But in the process, they look in the mirror, their life is a mess, the caregiver, because you can't live two lives.
No, we can't.
You cannot live two lives.
Wow.
I hope that answered, and that can
Yeah.
materialize itself in so many
Mm-hmm.
ways, but just getting caregivers to acknowledge it, that deficits are going to remain. And you have to be able to turn around and
Mm-hmm.
walk away, even though something
Mm-hmm.
cannot be done.
Yeah,
Not by you. You may have to, it just depends on all the resources that you have available
right.
and
That care
how
team.
that is
Yeah.
going to play out in your caregiving journey.
What a good reminder. I hope people really hear that and give themselves permission to not be everything and for everybody all the time. That is too much for any of us to carry.
And that
Yeah.
everyone is different.
Yeah.
You say, but my mom took care of my grandma.
Mm.
But my mom did that, and this is just what we do. But it fit for your mom's life. And even if you look back at your mom's life, did she suffer any negative consequences in the process? Are you willing to have those same negative consequences with your children who won't get to see you at a time in their life when they may need you at that same period that you're caregiving, or in a marital relationship? If your husband is not going to get your attention, that marriage is not going to stay what it needs to stay. It becomes an evaluation of what role can I play by realizing and accepting your limitations. I'm limited in this area because these are the obligations. And so if I'm going to continue to make that important in my life, in my personal life, that I'm going to not put this ahead of my marriage, then I need to stick to that. And I want to say, what can I work around that? I'm not going to say caregiving is not going to be about sacrifices. I really know that sacrificing is part of it. You can do both and not give and take. But what are those non-negotiables in your life? And that is one thing I'm always preaching in the group coaching is we should all have non-negotiables. I don't care short of needing to be resuscitated.
Right.
You should not cross a boundary on. I mean, if they are went into cardiac arrest, which now everybody knows what that means,
Yep. Yep.
yes, you can drop everything and go and give the CPR.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is just something, a routine, a habit, a want that your loved one with physical disabilities wants to keep in place because it makes them feel normal,
Mm-hmm.
it keeps them happy, are you going to drop everything to take care of that need? And if you're that person that's doing it, that is why you are bitter, you have anger issues with them, you're feeling isolated, you are feeling distant from your friends. It is not because you don't want to caregive anymore. It is because you've allowed caregiving to take the place of things that are more important.
Mm-hmm.
And you have written a definition of caregiving that you are now trying to live up to that you will never meet because
Right.
you're not meant to live two lives.
It's
I'm going to start saying,
unrealistic.
I'm like, I'm just like, I want to say some people can do it. I mean, there are people that have, I'm just like, there's some people who do it and they don't stress out about it, but
Right.
it goes out to, it always, it's all about the family dynamics. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about the emotional piece. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about the physical piece. It's all about the financial
Yeah,
piece.
it comes together, doesn't it? Yeah.
And some people, it comes together. I see
Mm-hmm.
some people doing so many things. I'm like, how do you do that? And they're just like, girl, and they're like, girl,
I
but they
know.
have it all, but they have
Mm-hmm.
set the priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Husband comes over. Husband's more in the yard while daughter's in the house doing something.
Right.
They all sit down and have lunch together, and
Mm-hmm.
they make it a affair where they can say, "Mom feels connected. Mom
Yeah.
knows that I'm going to attend to her needs. We're going to support her, but Mom is not our life.
Yeah.
We're supporting her. We're not becoming her."
Becoming her, being the arm that she doesn't have use of. Yes. And you're okay, so I love the name Finding a Foothold, and that is the podcast and your coaching and consulting and all of that. How do we do that? How do we find our foothold? What
Oh
does
my
that mean to
God.
you?
Finding the foothold means finding your definition of caregiving, finding the path that you are meant to walk by living out first the desire of your heart. Do you even want to do this? And for many of us, it is yes. Even if we don't plan on moving back home with our parents, we're not going to uproot our family, we're not going to quit our jobs. But the root of it is, do you care? And if you care for that person, that's where you start, where you start. and how that care gets manifested in your life is the foothold, the path that you take. And it's not determined by the care recipient. Even if they get angry, even if they thought you were going to be the daughter that moved back home, even though you're the first daughter, you're the oldest, that you're supposed to be doing this, or that you'd never had children, so you're automatically supposed to do this. None of that is determining factors. The determining factor is, how do you feel from the standpoint of your heart? You are supposed to walk this out. And that is determined by all of the other change, all of the other things that are going on in your life. How you are supposed to be true to your spouse, how you are supposed to be true to this, how you are supposed to be taking care of your health. All of these things have to be taken into factors. And what else? What are those things that you can cut off so that you can make room for caregiving and finding that way of doing it? What I offer as Finding a Foothold is just various opportunities for people to learn lessons, to learn. Sometimes you just need one question answered. You just want to know, why is it that my back hurts every time I put my arm in and out the wheelchair? Well, it could be that the wheelchair brake doesn't
Moves a little.
won't
Yes.
moves, and it's sliding and you're straining.
Hmm.
It just may be, you may just need one answer. Look, I leave opportunity for that. That is my
Hmm.
podcast. It's called Finding a Foothold. Caregivers Finding a Foothold. It is a podcast where it allows listeners to call and leave a question. I mean, I've had all types of questions, and some of them are like, "Oh my gosh, they must have been in my house when I had when she
Oh.
don't want to eat my food." I'm like,
Hmm.
I have to tell my daughter to stir in the pot so I can honestly say, "You cooked it. Now go back there and
Yeah.
grandma," because she thinks I cooked she's not going to eat it.
Oh.
Just different types of things. So I get questions on the podcast that I will follow up in a subsequent podcast where I will answer that question in saying, "Hey, I got a call from a Nicole, and Nicole wants to know." Or if you leave it where I could actually capture the audio, I will play it. So just say what you want to say, and I'll play it and I'll answer it, and that's the podcast. And I also similar things on Clubhouse, where I have a Clubhouse room where you get to listen as we have a topic of the week. So we may be talking about fall prevention, and if you want to hop on Clubhouse, there's opportunities to listen and talk back and forth. So look, I know that funding is so limited with caregivers, so I want to just have those opportunities for people to get that answers to those questions that are just surface questions that I can just say, "Oh, you know what? They make a piece of equipment for that. Have you ever tried? Give that a try and see if that works, and follow back up with me, and we'll talk about it." Those type of things. So because it's sometimes it's just one little thing, and even as a home health OT, I may go into a home and like, "Look, y'all have it. Y'all are doing it well. Y'all have everything, but look, let me just tell you about one little thing I think can really be an
Make
option
it
for
better.
you."
Yeah.
And I'll tell them that, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we didn't think of that." I'm like, "Okay, that's it. I don't need to tell you anything else."
Oh.
So I think that is probably 50% of the caregivers.
Yeah, it
They just
is.
question
And it's
answers.
really the important things.
Yeah.
Those simple questions that we think are simple, and they are, they can be, but those are the really big that can be weighing on us as a family member if we're getting up at night, or we've got some falling that's happening, that it could be those one little changes. And I find too that it's like, as a caregiver, I want to know practical information. Like, tell me how to make tell me how to do
Yeah.
this in a simple way. And so what you provide is just incredible to for families and life-giving, because they're able to like ask the questions that are burning, that they don't have someone near them that can help
You
with
know,
them.
I can answer questions or if a person can get questions answered, it makes tasks easier. It saves physical energy, saves time, and then I can start talking about self-care. There is a lot of putting the cart before the horse in caregiving spaces
Hmm.
where people are screaming self-care, self-care, self-care. When how are you going to have even 15 minutes for self-care if you're just so stressed and burdened and physically drained?
Yeah.
I'm all about, let me show you how to take a 2 hour morning and get it down to 30 minutes,
Oh my
because
gosh,
you got to
so
set
good.
boundaries.
Hmm.
You cannot cook a breakfast every morning. I don't advocate Pop-Tarts. I don't
Yeah.
even eat it. But there just got to come a morning when you put something
Hmm.
processed in front of them or a piece of fruit because
Right.
you're not cooking that day. Or you're not going to drop by their house and you're not going to be stressed out because the kids, you're missing the bus stop because you got to go by and do certain things that parents are able to do for themselves.
Mm.
I want you to start thinking about what can mom still do, or is she just having a episode where she's just being manipulative
Hmm.
and taking time from you that
Yeah.
you need to be
Yeah.
allocated to something else.
That was
So
my
go
question
ahead,
as you
Deb.
were talking about it is how do we deal with our loved one that maybe they're really able to manage some of those things on their own, but
Yeah.
they refuse to? Because I know for me, I was stopping by a woman in our neighborhood a couple times a week and I would help her with various tasks and using the restroom and food and things like that. And while there were things that I know she probably could manage on her own, she was really used to the routine of someone doing all of the things. And so what do
Yeah.
we do in those
Those
situations?
are the situations where that requires the most courage,
Yeah.
especially for my daughter to look at a mom and say, "No, I'm not
Hmm.
doing it." But we're not saying in that way, in that in that
Yeah.
manner.
Right.
It takes courage to take that first leap of, I've got to almost sound defiant. I'm going to say, I'm not going to do it. But basically, you want to make sure that person can do it. If you've eliminated the fall risk, the injury risk, all of the things, and you put things in place, or things don't need to be put in place, there's just no reason why they're not doing it, then you need to set boundaries. Saying no. While you do that, I'm going to do this part. And sometimes it's just really getting them back in the routine of doing things where you're not just so adamant, I'm not going to do it because you are just lazy, you don't want to do it yourself. I mean, I wouldn't take that approach, but sometimes it's just getting them back into the routine of, look, I think you can do it. Let me just see what the issue is. And you standing next there to them and just sort of walking them through a process of something that they may not be doing because of out of fear or just out of they've just lost the routine of doing it. But other times there are those situations where the loved ones are just very demanding. They want the daughter, they want the son to do things that they're capable of doing themselves, and you just have to draw the line in the sand and say, no, I'm not going to do these things. You really need to start doing them. And if they go undone, then y'all need to look at choices like, look, this is going undone. Are you willing to live with this? And if you're willing to live with that,
Yeah.
it becomes undone.
Yeah. I was reading about, okay, so being, I would say I'm like a recovering people pleaser,
Yeah.
where, I'm the oldest of four kids. I've had to kind of be in that, making everything happen for people and mom role a little bit. I have an amazing mother, but just being the oldest of four, you want everything to go smoothly, right? I wanted everybody to be happy. And I was reading about, okay, when we set the boundary and we start to say no, or that doesn't work for me, or I can't do that, we feel like that feels wrong, like internally, it feels so uncomfortable. And for people, I'm always like amazed when people are just can easily say no. I'm like, oh, you make it look so easy.
It's just
I mean, I've
no.
gotten like a million times better and I've come so far, so I'm in a good place. But I think especially for people that have complicated family dynamics or
Yes.
people pleasing, tendencies.
It can be hard,
Yeah.
but just saying no and not waiting on a response,
Mm,
not waiting on their accepting of the no. It's just you in your awareness know that this is not a safety concern. This
mm,
is just a choice. They're choosing not to do this, then your no becomes no, and that settles it. And for me, it took a while for me to even see that in the life I'm caring for my mom, in the things that when she was even living in my home with me, and seeing that there are things that as a therapist I wanted her to do. Like, Ma, just get up and stand up every couple of hours. Don't always. And she didn't. And it just became a point where I'm like, I can't make her do these things. These are her choices. And then when she can no longer do them, them like, Ma, this is what I didn't want to see happen. But there are times when they have got to take ownership of how they want their life lived out. And yes, there are certain things that we will do because it would I can't let laundry just pile up.
Right.
I've just got to do things to keep things rolling when it's my responsibility to do those things. But if it's something that she can do for herself, and then things just need to be accepted, that they can make choices. I hope I'm giving you the answer that you need
Yeah.
on that, but it's
No,
hard.
it's a good reminder. Yeah,
It's,
it's a good
yeah.
reminder. It is hard, and it's helpful when people outside of our little circle or family can offer that like hope and encouragement to keep using your voice, keep setting the boundary, keep finding your support system, your care team. And I think we never can hear it enough. I'm always reminding myself every day, I feel like, to honor my boundaries and use my voice and all of that. And I think it's so helpful that you're able to continue to encourage people to do that.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, and just really taking a step back and looking through the lens of the one you're caring for at times too,
That's a good reminder.
that
Yeah.
is an important part of caregiving, because sometimes we can be very, we've got this routine and we want to do things and we're really seeing it from our lens all
Hmm.
the time. And for me, and just being able to step back and really reevaluating, it's the why. Why do they need that connection? Why do they need this here? And sometimes it's okay, even if you know it's not needed for the physical part of the doing, but for that emotional connection of them wanting you to do a certain task. There are those, I mean, it's just all a balancing thing where I'm like, I know she can do this,
Yeah.
but she enjoys seeing me do this. And this is something, a time that we can get to talk and I can engage her in it,
Right.
which is different from a manipulative
Mm.
move
I love that distinction that you
where
talked
you
about. Yeah.
know they just want to have that control over you. And it is okay when you know that they can do that, but it's just you want to be that daughter. And there's sometimes when you want to step in and do those things that they could probably do themselves, but it has to be weighed against what are the big things in the big picture that are also on the plate of caregiving. So you did a great point of bringing in, always adding in the people who are on the team, in the support of you in the caregiving, because you can never do this alone. It's just hard. You
Yeah.
can never.
We need each other. We do. We do. Where can we learn more? I want everyone to listen to your podcast and find out about the other work that you're up to. And you've got caregiver support groups. So share with us all the different ways that we can connect with you. And I know you've also got some things for employers and companies to support working caregivers too, which is awesome. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let me start this part again. Okay, so look, let me tell you a little about other things that I do. And thank you for the opportunity to share that. I do have a podcast. So call the podcast.
Yeah.
It is Caregivers Finding a Foothold on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. It's on all the platforms. So Caregivers Finding a Foothold is one option. And look, I love that option because it doesn't cost you a
I
dime. Just
know. We can
listen.
just go. Yeah.
Call and leave your questions and I'll answer them. And if it's something that I think is urgent, I'll even send you a quick email. I'm like, look, this seems like I need to answer this right away.
Mm.
Or I may get on live and do an IG live related to something. But the podcast is one way that you can contact me. I'm on Instagram at Finding a Foothold. I'm on TikTok at Finding a Foothold. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Pinterest. All of these have some Finding a Foothold part to it. And I'm on LinkedIn, Consuela Marshall on LinkedIn. So those are all the spaces that you can find me. There's a couple of services that I do provide, and one in the way of group coaching. Right now, I just sort of, and it's a quarterly coaching. Like there've been some modification to some of. I'm doing things for 2023 just to make it more accessible to a greater range of people. So my group coaching program, which is called Unlosing Yourself in Caregiving, I offer it quarterly. And it's a 6-week program. So it's where we go through so many different aspects of caregiving and just going from the why. Why are you doing this? What is your life? What do you need to hold on to? What do you need to let go? What are the needs of your parents? What are their functional levels? It really gets you to really think about caregiving and seeing what your role is going to be and who your team needs to be and what life needs to be for you and your loved one. And that is the unlosing yourself in caregiving. And then as an ongoing thing, I do have a group support group. that launched this year. And it is a subscription base. You can come as often as you want a month for one low cost. And it's where you get to just share your stories. We get to listen. We get to support you. We get to answer some questions. I mean, it's just a lot of connection there. And
Oh,
that has grown to be my favorite thing is uh, the caregiving support group. Those are the two major things that I have going on a routine basis is the support group and the group program that I offer. Look, there's just other opportunities. Because you asked, I'm also going to be soon doing a webinar with Ross Jones where we're going to really talk about hospital discharge. So that's coming up in February. So that's going to be really quick where
oh,
going to
I will look for that.
we're going to work together to just help caregivers make that transition from hospital to home
Mm,
in the safest manner. Just
yeah.
teaching them what to look out for and what to prepare for and how to make that journey smoother and prevent injury and rehospitalization. So we'll be talking through that in a one-day seminar, a one-day webinar,
Mm.
Roz and I. So look forward to that in February. But look, that's the gist of it. It's
Yeah.
not complicated here over at Finding a Foothold. Visit the website at findingafoothold.com. Catch me on the social media platforms. Finding a Foothold. I mean, it's really simple. Just go across Instagram, LinkedIn, all of them. Finding a
Oh,
Foothold.
make it easy. It's so good. We can find you in all of those places. I
All of
think that
those.
helps when it's got that, it's all uniform. We know where you are and what is happening.
And it's just opportunities for one-on-one support. If you need that one-on-one support where you just have time, me and you, we get to really go through the list of things and really help you pinpoint what are your major needs. And if you really need that group support, then the group coaching program and the group support groups could be the option for you. And if you just need just an answer, just call the podcast. Just hop on Clubhouse. Easy. I've made it simple, just from needing a little to needing a lot. Just want to
Because you
make
know how we need it to be simple. We're tired and we're busy and we need to be able to just pull out that info. Thank you. Consuela, I just have learned so much from you today and I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for sharing with us your story and all that you encourage and give people hope. Anyone's would be so lucky to work with you.
well, thank you. I appreciate it. Life can be made simple in caregiving. You can still have a fulfilled life and still see that the needs of your loved ones are provided for. And learning your way of doing it is the key. You have to find a way to hold on to your life while also doing your best at the caregiving. It's really up to you.
Yeah,
It really is.
we
Mhm.
have agency. Yeah.
Yes, we do. We do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.